A person can save a language from disappearing. Would you believe that? And what if they did it not with an army, but with nothing more than a pen? 1,000 years ago, a poet refused to stand by and watch his people's history and legends fade into oblivion. He devoted 30 years of his life to a single work. In return, he found not wealth or fame, but disappointment and exile. Yet today, his name is still remembered, while the names of many powerful rulers of his age have long been forgotten. Before we get to this remarkable scholar, let me tell you a personal anecdote connected to his story. I'd like to tell you about a book that's been sitting in my library in Istanbul for nearly 10 years. I bought it during my first year at university. I carried it home like a trophy of victory, then didn't even open it for 6 months. Why? Because it was enormous. We're talking about a single poem written by a single person with a length roughly twice that of the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. For a long time I thought that was just an amusing piece of trivia, but it isn't. In fact, that's the very heart of this story. There's a question almost nobody asks. Why would someone spend 30 years, nearly half of their adult life, writing a work that long? You don't do it for money. As we'll soon see, he was barely paid at all. So what exactly was he fighting for? Let's travel back to the 10th century. Several centuries had passed since the Arab conquest of Persia. Arabic had become the language of government, religion, and scholarship. Among Persian intellectuals, a quiet concern was spreading. If things continued this way, the Persian language, its ancient kings, and its legends might disappear within a few generations. They could simply dissolve into history. One man living in the city of Tus decided he would not allow that to happen. His name was Ferdowsi. Instead of writing a political manifesto, he did something far more stubborn. He gathered the entire mythological and historical memory of Iran into a single epic poem. And he did so while deliberately avoiding Arabic vocabulary whenever possible, choosing instead to write in a consciously pure form of Persian. The result? 60,000 couplets. And to this day, it is widely regarded as the longest epic poem ever completed by a single author. This is where the story becomes personally fascinating for me. I remember a professor casually mentioning one day that Sohrab and Rustum, one of the most famous poems of the Victorian era, was essentially a retelling of a single scene from this epic. That immediately got my attention. The English poet who wrote it, Matthew Arnold, lived in the 1850s and didn't even know Persian. Yet he encountered a summary of the story and was so captivated by it that he rewrote the entire episode as a poem of his own. And honestly, that scene deserves its reputation. There is a legendary warrior named Rostam. Think of him as the Persian equivalent of Hercules. One day, he is forced into single combat with a young soldier from the enemy army. Neither knows the other's true identity. When the fight ends and it is already too late, Rostam discovers a horrifying truth. The man he has killed is his own son, Sohrab. A friend of mine who grew up in Iran once told me that he had memorized parts of this story before he even started elementary school. That's the kind of cultural weight we're talking about. But honestly, the part that affected me most isn't even inside the epic itself. It's what happened to Ferdowsi after he finished it. The ruler who commissioned the work, Mahmud of Ghazni, had promised 1 gold coin for every couplet. After 30 years of labor, Ferdowsi finally delivered the manuscript, but a jealous court official intercepted the payment and replaced the gold with silver before it reached him. The first time I read that detail, I remember feeling irrationally angry on behalf of a man who had been dead for 1,000 years. I'm not entirely sure what that says about me. When the money arrived, Ferdowsi happened to be in a bathhouse. The moment he realized the bags contained silver rather than gold, he gave all of it away, to the bathhouse attendant, to a sherbet seller, to the messenger who delivered the payment. Then he wrote a scathing satire mocking the Sultan and fled the city before punishment could catch up with him. Years later, Mahmud finally learned what had happened. Determined to correct the injustice, he ordered the full payment to be sent. 60,000 gold coins. But the timing was almost too cruel to believe. The caravan carrying the gold entered the gates of Tus. At the very moment Ferdowsi's funeral procession was leaving through the opposite gate. He never touched a single one of the coins he had earned, and yet, 1,000 years later, Persian speakers can still read much of his work with surprisingly little need for translation. Iran still dedicates a special day in its calendar to his memory. And in England, even a Victorian poet who never learned his language eventually felt compelled to retell one of his stories. Not bad at all, especially for a man who died penniless. If you enjoy stories about people whose pens and determination outlived entire empires, then this channel is exactly for you. If you enjoyed this video, I'd be delighted if you subscribed and left a like. And I'll see you in the next episode, because next time we'll explore another extraordinary figure whose story might surprise you even more. See you then. See.